Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to search Be My Breast Friend. She should come on. The magic of the internet. Let's see. We're inviting. There we go. Is she hopping on? It should be. It connected so easily. Let's see. Let's see if it will connect. Everybody, we are just taking a second here. Kristen, unable to join. There we go. Maybe.
It's me. It's got to be me.
That would be. Now,
I
can
was
you see me
watching
okay?
you.
Can
Okay,
you
you
see?
look great. You look
Great.
great. We look great. We're
All
we're
right.
back. We're back,
Well,
baby.
and now I actually have my visuals, so
Oh, well,
our start.
everything happens for a reason. So let's
Absolutely.
let's rock and roll.
Let's do
I'm
it. So
excited.
you and I basically had a little chitty chat. You had put out a
Mhm,
post on
mhm.
the magic number and storage capacity.
Yeah.
And I DM'd you and was like, the numbers don't number. And it's something that had confused me for a really long time. So you and I kind of had our private chat, and I think it's worth it for everybody to kind of hear our internal monologue and discussion.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
oh, look at that. You got a thumbs up. So basically, Nancy Moorbacher was a lactation consultant who came up with this term, the magic number. And she did that decades ago. And it was basically a number of how many times in 24 hours, yes, there it
Mhm,
is, how many times in 24 hours somebody would need to move milk in order to maintain supply, and
mhm,
then how many times you need to increase to see your milk increase, or how many times you drop in order to see milk decrease.
mhm,
So her basic theory is once you find your magic number, that milk removal amount will maintain supply. And it's
mhm.
really important for exclusive pumpers who are like, I don't want to be pumping, every 2 hours all the time. How many pumps can I get away with?
Yeah, agreed. And I think too with this chart, it's shared often. I'm not the first one to share this. And I think that when it is shared, it's usually just shared. For me, it's almost like clickbait. And I think that there needs to be a conversation, like you said, about it and breaking it down and knowing where are these numbers coming from so we can understand how to interpret this chart. And to be perfectly honest, it took me a little while. I've been sitting on those graphics for months. I had them made, and I've just been sitting on them because I wasn't sure. Number one, if I should share it because I know it can be controversial, and then also like I want to make sure that I'm also able to deliver the monologue behind it and interpret it appropriately. I got a dog. Let me get this dog. I can
So
hear him
it's
breathing. Come on.
Yeah, so it's the theory too of breast storage capacity, meaning everybody has a different amount of milk making tissue in the breast, and that milk making tissue is constantly making milk. But there reaches a point in milk production that when the breast is overly full, it slows down in milk production. The milk needs emptied, and each breast can have its own storage capacity, and each breast so within the same person, they could have more milk making tissue on one side than the other. That's where you get your like slacker boob stuff from, right?
Mhm.
But then across women, some have large storage capacities they can make and hold a lot, and some have smaller capacities. And so they're basically trying to take the storage capacity of milk making tissue and collapse it into a number.
Yes. And that's where I think that is not what I think it is where our conversation started. Because you said that you had said the small, so I have it open on my screen behind my phone,
Yeah.
and you had mentioned that your concern was that the numbers didn't math, as you had
Yeah.
put it. You're like, you'd never be able to feed your child if we were basing all these numbers. I shouldn't say never. That's not the proper. That I shouldn't have said it in that from that
Yeah. Yeah.
direction. But you'd have struggles of exclusively breastfeeding your child with those figures that are on the chart.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I totally agree with
I
that.
don't know
And
if it's,
that's where,
this is the chart.
yeah, that's yeah. I was wondering if we could share an image on the screen, like a, but I
I
don't
was
think
trying to
so.
figure that out, and I don't think we can because I
Yeah,
had it saved to be able to share. But
yeah.
basically, it's saying if you have the largest storage capacity, meaning you can pump 10 or more ounces at a single pump session,
Hmm.
that you only need to pump 3 to 4 times a day to maintain supply, which would be 30 to 40 ounces. But if you
Hmm.
have the smallest capacity, 1 to 2 ounces, you only had to pump 8 times a day, but that would mean you're only making 8 to 16 ounces,
Right. And
which
that's
is
what
not
you,
a full supply. And that was my
correct.
concern. It wasn't
Mhm.
the higher ups, it wasn't like 3 to 5 ounces up to 10 ounces. It's once you get into the 2 to 3 ounce capacity or the 1 to 2 ounce capacity that the numbers don't number.
Right. And that is exact. That was your original voice message to me was
Yes.
like, Kristen, I just don't agree with that. And then I responded that I interpret this chart to be based on individual breasts. Also, going back to what you had just said, that each breast is capable of different storage and different production.
But
This
then that would
song.
mean if you're pumping 10 plus ounces, that you'd be in 3 to 4 times a day, that you'd be making 60 to 80 ounces a day,
Tell me
right?
about that.
Or
Largest.
yeah, because that would
Well,
mean if
I
both
don't.
breast is making 10, then you'd be making enough for twins.
I I don't agree that this table is I believe it's based on numbers and what you experience as on a regular output, but it's not going to always be that. That's why I believe that there's like the ranges are necessary to take into consideration. um and but if you look at, yeah, I do agree with you, the 10 plus ounces maintain at 3 to 4, so you're doubling that times, yeah, 60,
If you're
right? I
dividing it
do.
between the breasts, right?
Yeah, yeah. I do agree with you, but I also think that your largest capacity isn't, like, kind of going back to what I just said, isn't going to be the same output you're going to get at every session. So
Right.
I think that's where the interpretation really needs to be driven home, because we're not talking about 10 ounces out of a breast at every single session.
Yes.
From like talking, I do have an oversupply, not a significant oversupply. I'm 1 year postpartum currently, and 5 years ago, I'll never forget, 5 years ago, I had my first singleton and I woke up so engorged. I was in so much pain. I pumped 16 ounces out of each breast. I've never done that since, ever.
Wow.
My first session in the morning. And that was a one and done, never happened. So I feel like you can't, like, we're not looking to, like, I'm not looking to, like, I don't know, like blow sunshine up my own butt here.
Yeah.
If I can't do something regularly, it's not a real number. That was a fluke. That never happened again. But if I based everything off of that, I'd be looking at this table, excuse me, completely differently. In like this morning, I can typically get any, like, approximately like 9 ounces out of each breast when I wake up. And then the rest of the day, I might see anywhere between 4 to 6.
Yep.
So that's why I think this table is, I think I do like it.
Yeah.
I personally can relate to it. I really can. I do pump 5 times a day. When I go down to 3, I've said it for a long time, for years. When I get to 3, I go into weaning mode.
Yep.
So I can't do 3, is not sustainable for me. And I think average speaking, to maintain, I do believe that if you have a adequate supply, like enough, and I even like, I don't know if just enough is the right. I don't like that just enough. I feel like
To
I call
feed
it
the
like the
baby
perfect
and not the
pour.
freezer. It's
Yeah.
basically I'm feeding my baby, I'm making enough to feed my baby
Hmm.
versus I'm making a surplus, I'm making extra, I'm feeding the
Yeah.
baby and, right?
Yes.
And I think that's
Yes.
the bigger conversation because when
Yeah.
you're talking stashing versus feeding,
Hmm.
based on goal, it does make a difference with these charts and tables too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, and to add to that, the other really big question is, when do I apply these numbers? Is this
Yeah.
pre or post regulation? And when is regulation, and how do I know I'm regulated?
So, for people who aren't familiar with that term, basically the first 3 months, the body knows that it had a baby, and milk is hormone driven. And the body makes more milk, should make more milk than the baby needs, because it knows baby is in their fastest rate of growth and will be doing lots of cluster feeding. And it's trying to figure out how many babies there are and how big they are. So, a 6 pound baby at birth needs less milk than an 8 pound baby, and the body is ready to feed that baby however big the baby is. So most of the time people will have extra milk, and that's why you can have these big stashes, because people feed the baby and then they pump off that additional milk that's still in the breast, and then it tells the body, oh, we have a big baby, make more milk, and so they keep making more and more. But around 3 to 4 months, it varies for different people, but usually around 3 to 4 months the body says, I had the baby, hormones are great, we're far enough away from pregnancy that now we're going to shift to, I have a baby, make the milk that's routinely being moved. And that's what we mean when we say regulation. We mean that the body's no longer relying on hormones. Baby should be 10 to 12 pounds, so their milk volume needs don't change, they're not gaining weight as fast, so the body doesn't need to make that extra milk. And so you're right. We don't know. I don't know, because it's not. I read through Moorbacher's original blog on this morning, and it doesn't say whether it's pre or post regulation.
Yeah.
I would assume it's post regulation.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Because how often too do you hear, oh, I'm 3 or 4 months postpartum and where did my supply go? I'm not making as much milk. So I think you can't, hormones, no matter the conversation, are difficult to overcome, whether we're talking pregnancy, regulation, cycle, right? When you have hormones introduced, it's hard to manipulate them for a long term. And in this case with this table, I agree with you. It's post. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
post regulation. And in that, I would also say it's consistent. It's
Yeah.
consistent removal to know your supply.
Yes.
So if you have a fluke, if you're like, wow, I have a really large capacity, I can hold 16 ounces in both breasts. That's only happened once, but it can happen. That's not regular, and that's not what I should be basing my numbers and my expectations
Yeah,
off
for sure.
of.
Well, and what I do appreciate about this chart is they put the average capacity at 3 to 5 ounces with 8 to 10 removals, which we know in the research is average. So if you take 100 people, right? Do you remember that old science, the bell curve and the mean and average? Like, that's
Yeah.
basically what we're basing it on. If you have 100 people, the 50 in the middle will be able to pump 3 to 5 ounces, and they need to move that milk about 8 times a day, up to 10, depending on cluster feeding, to maintain a full supply, which is 25 to 30 ounces. And then this 25 needs to pump more in order to maintain supply, and then
Mhm.
these people can pump less because they're Olympic athletes in the breastfeeding community. Their body just has more tissue, it has a larger storage capacity, it has their hormones are balanced, their body just has the faucet turned on. So I do really appreciate that it's the average is what we know in the research is typical for most people.
So kind of going back to what you had just said, because you had said something that triggered this thought. Where do you feel what is your interpretation of this chart? Do you feel that it should be based on each breast individually or collectively?
I think it should be collectively.
Yeah.
I do. Because
Okay.
what, and again, that's why the red flag in me is like, well,
Mhm.
for the top half of the chart, it makes sense that it's combined, because 10 ounces combined 3 to 4 times is 30 to 40 ounces. That's more than enough for a baby to grow on. And
Mhm.
3 to 5 times, or 3 to 5 ounces, 8 to 10 times a day is, I mean, that's still huge, but 8 times 3 and 8 times 5, you're still sitting in that sweet spot, 24 to 40, right? It's
Can
when you
I?
get in the
Mhm.
smallest capacity that you're like, wait, um, the numbers aren't numbering to maintain, right? It should be 12 times a day at 2 ounces. 12 times 2 is 24. So
I
it's the one pot with the 1 ounce maker that I'm like, but though often those people are falling into the insufficient glandular tissue,
Yeah,
meaning they're
sure.
maintaining whatever supply they
Hmm.
have. So it could also be interpreted as when you're in that smallest capacity, there's not enough milk making tissue. And so in order to maintain whatever you do have, that's what you're looking at. And then that category means possibly supplementing.
Can I contradict you and see
Yes,
what you
do it.
think?
Yeah,
Think
that's
what
why
you
we're
just
here.
see what you think I'm whatever
Yeah.
my head's going with this. So let's go with the largest capacity. We're talking like you got the biggest capacity here, right? And you're suggesting and I'm not here to argue, but I think it's
I
like
love
it's
it.
kind of fun to bounce ideas.
Yeah.
10 ounces collectively. So we're talking approximately 5 ounces, give or take, out of each breast, right? And then to maintain, according to this chart, to maintain that supply is
Yeah.
3 to 4 pump sessions a day.
Yeah.
So if that now look at the spacing, right? You got a 24-hour day and we're only pumping 3 to 4 times in a daytime to maintain a large capacity or large volume supply. If I went from a personal point of view on this and just, I mean, truly like talking to other moms and clients, I don't think it's sustainable. I think if you're pumping, if you're average, if we go down to the average bar,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure we add this everywhere so everyone can like use this as a visual again. It says 3 to 5 ounces, and I'm gonna suggest that it's out of each individual breast, and it's saying a maintenance suggested pump schedule would be 6 times a day. That does make more sense to me. That, and I guess too, if I think about putting baby to the breast, they could be getting 3 ounces or so out of each breast potentially, or like a couple ounces out of each breast, depending on your supply. So that is why when we had initially spoke about this, when I had originally posted it, about a month or so ago now, that is why we had gone back and forth on our voice messages. And I said, well, I personally believe it's out of individual breasts because they should be treated individually and based on like the maintenance number decrease and increase, it just made
Yeah.
more sense in my head. So
Well, and I think too, the reason I struggle with finite charts is because then there's some people out there that are like, okay, I can pump 3, and they, it's a bigger conversation of, okay,
yeah,
now I get to only pump 6. And then if they see supply drop, they're like, what the heck happened? Like, I thought I was following the chart. The
yeah,
other thing to take in consideration is finding the unique magic number for individual people to make whatever goal somebody has. So if your goal is to just feed your baby and you're exclusively pumping, it's figuring out, okay, well, I can pump 8 in the morning because I've gone 8 hours without pumping, but then I make 3 or 4 the rest of the day. How many times in that 24 hours do I need to pump to get what I want? And if we start to see supply dip going, oh, I need to increase my pump times.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
it's like all of the numbers is like, there's a science and an art. The science says I should be able to maintain supply on 5 pumps, but the art is I'm actually seeing a decrease. I think I have to go back to 6 or 7.
100% agree with that. And then you've got factors too that may play in, right? I mean, just stress and maybe poor removal. Maybe you're using a pump that isn't adequate for that particular session and you're using it just to encourage production or get what you can out because that's the time allotted and that's like a mini session, if you will. So I agree. I totally agree. I do personally like this chart. I do think that it's helpful, but I don't think it's gospel by any means. You have
Well,
to just
and then the impact of cycling on supply, right? Periods and menstruation can impact supply. So your magic number during certain times of the month might actually be different than your magic number at other times of the month just because of hormones and
totally.
fluctuations, right? And so it's that understanding and awareness because I've seen that happen where people are like, oh my God, where did my milk go? And you're like, are you on your period? Yes. Okay, you need to increase your magic number during your period to
Yeah.
maintain whatever you can until your hormones shift and then go back to your magic number. Because my concern with some of these is that people are like, my magic number is 6, and then they hit a dip, they go on vacation, they get sick, they have a period, and then they don't increase the number. They stay at their magic number thinking it will stay. And then
Yeah.
they're like, where did my supply go? Because the supply came down and now it's maintaining at a lower
Mhm.
amount. Right. So it's the
Yeah.
flexibility of most of the time my magic number is 6, but sometimes I have to go up to 8 or 10 to bring it back up.
Mhm.
And then sometimes I, can go down because I'm making more.
Totally. And that also is what I like to warn moms when they're asking about when like how soon should I see a dip or an increase? Or if you do believe that something here is your magic number and you're doing it for a while, it took your body time to regulate to what you're doing now. So you could
Yes.
be down regulating. you don't really know it until, and I hate to say it's too late, but it stinks. It is hard to get your supply back
Yeah.
sometimes when it gets too far down. So if you start seeing it dip, and I don't think like 1 ounce or 2 ounces is a significant decrease at all. Fluctuation, in my opinion, in my experience, is completely natural. It's when you see that consistent day after day, whether that's like it's a consistent hold. If you go from pumping 25 ounces a day down to 20 for an entire week straight, something happened. And
Yeah.
that's when we got to readdress
Yeah.
what made the change. So,
Yeah.
and
100%.
that removal is so key. And I know we have another live where we speak on the good and the bad breast pumps, and
Yeah.
that's a huge factor too. You could be pumping with a semi, I don't know, like a decent, I don't know. I have a cup here, and this has nothing to do with this company, but you could be using this as a primary, any kind of cup or mobile or anything. I mean, I got stuff all over the place. Like it's just all over. But if I'm choosing an insufficient pump for my magic number pump sessions, I could still be doing myself a disservice. So
Right.
it's
Like,
just a whole formula.
for sure. Like you could be using a Spectra with the appropriate size flange for weeks, and then all of a sudden you switch to a wearable and you're not
Mhm.
seeing as much. It doesn't mean your magic number or your storage capacity has changed. It means the pump is not efficiently moving the milk that's
Yeah.
still in there. And if you
Yeah.
do that too much, it will drop supply just because the pump wasn't efficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Pumping is not, it's this chart again, I do love it, but
Yeah.
it's not gospel. It's a whole formula. How often, what do you use, and what, like, everything. Did you drop a session too soon? Are we not regulated? Are we putting too much stock into our early postpartum supply? Because you're getting potentially copious amounts of milk, potentially, and you're
100%.
like, wow, I'm ready to rock and roll and I'm ready to sleep again.
Yeah.
Drop the middle of the night, do this because the magic number chart says I can.
Yeah.
And that's why I just think, yeah, I love
But
it, but it
Well,
needs to
and I
be
do
read,
think
interpreted right.
that to your point of the individual versus combined breasts, it's also a great way to help a slacker, right? Like, let's just say that both breasts, this is my visual, right? These are 2 ounce shot glasses. Let's say both breasts are making this, right? This would be 4 ounces combined. That's very different than if you have 2 ounces on one side and 5 on the other, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a slacker, this one might need to be emptied more in order to get you back up to having an equal capacity.
Mhm.
But having this combined 4 ounces is a normal supply, but it looks so small, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
if you think about it. But this is very normal. So these capacities are much more normal than like these capacities. These are 8 ounces. Like I don't see it as often in my
Yeah.
population to have that larger capacity. But it can help when you're like, oh, I'm definitely pumping way more on righty, my stud and my dud. How do I get my dud to make more? Where you're like, okay, we just have to empty the dud more to bring it back
Yeah.
up to the stud.
Another question that's pretty common, and I'm not sure, I haven't really been able to watch the questions here. Not we can look through them before we close it down, of course. But moms who exclusively breastfeed and are going back to work or are going on a quick trip, say weekend trip getaway or something, they ask, how often do I need to pump?
Yep.
And I do think, I mean, it's hard to tell what your capacity is when you're not personally actively pulling the milk.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I think for those moms, a lot of it is how many times in 24 hours is baby breastfeeding and what is their average. Now a lot of people aren't tracking that because they're like, I don't know, a boobful, like I don't even watch the clock, right? So if you're going into back to work or going into a vacation, it could mean taking 3 days and just getting a sense of how many times does baby feed in 24 hours. And then you think of max volume 30 ounces, 25 to 30 ounces, and dividing that by the number of feedings. And that kind of gives you a sense of how many ounces you'd be looking for when you do pump. And a lot of times it's like, well, can you try to match the number of nursings you'd be missing? So if baby eats at 8 and 11 and 2 and 5, then can you pump at those same times or a similar time so that you're still keeping milk moving through?
I met a mom one time at a function, and she was so kind, and it stinks because you don't know what you don't know. And we were talking about milk supply, and she said, I had so much milk when the baby was born, and now I don't have any milk at all. And I said, well, may I ask how often you're pumping? And she goes, when I feel
Oh,
full,
yeah.
maybe like twice a day, and it's unfortunate because again, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that I don't know, just having some kind of baseline and pumping when baby would be eating, like you said, like that between like the whole thing. I don't think the magic number is irrelevant to an exclusively breastfed mom, but I think that it is still helpful. But I do
It's
agree that you like following baby's needs and demands is, and not what your body feels.
yeah.
Like follow when you're in that position.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the breast also changes as much as the baby does, right? There's extra blood and fluid in the breast at the beginning to help support making milk, but it's also extra pressure in the breast to actually push milk out to a learning baby. And then that extra blood and fluid goes away anywhere from 6 to 12, 16 weeks. That full soft goes away, not because the same milk isn't being made, but because the extra blood and fluid in the breast get reabsorbed. Your body doesn't need it. Your baby
Yeah.
should efficiently feed. So when you have a softer breast, a lot of people are like, it coincides with the milk shift, with baby
Yeah.
sleeping, having sleep regressions and growth spurts. So people are like, oh my gosh, I'm not full anymore. I must have lost my milk. And my baby's fussy at the breast and they're not sleeping as much. When in reality, the breast is just more efficient. It's doing what it should be doing.
Hmm.
So that can be really confusing too. And that's also when the correct flange size really makes a difference, because a lot of people can get away with a larger flange when there's more fullness in the breast, because the
Yeah.
breast just pushes it to any flange. But as that gets softer, it really is apparent that, oh, we need to go to the correct diameter for that nipple, because there isn't that extra pressure in the breast to help compensate for the wrong flange.
Yeah, absolutely. That that could be a whole conversation all by itself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess schedule us up for another one.
I know, right? Yeah, because I have seen pump flange sizing change
Mhm.
as you hit that regulation. And I've also seen magic numbers subtly shift because, again, you don't have that extra pressure pushing
Mhm.
milk to the pump. You don't have that extra milk. It regulates to whatever is routinely being moved. So I think sometimes you can kind of chase the number, right? It might be
Yeah.
less when you're initially postpartum and you have more fullness, and it might be more once you regulate. Um, and change flange sizes.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't need, I'm familiar with engorgement, of course, but I didn't know the science. I'd never heard that about the breast being more full to help move the milk forward. That's
It
pretty
gives more
cool.
stability there, right? Like there's
Yeah,
more
it makes
tissue.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can totally relate to that. I feel like my breasts are like like so different than they were in the very beginning. And honestly, I'm not really making any more, any less milk than I was.
Yeah.
And I really do manipulate my supply because I know that I'm feeding my 12-month-old is still, he loves it, and my 3-year-old loves it.
Yeah.
She'll drink it all if she could.
Yeah.
Today she was trying to get into the refrigerator to take the mason jar out. I say, you drop that, you're going to ruin everybody's day. So I don't shoot for an oversupply, but I do know what I need to
Yeah.
maintain enough so they're both getting what they want. And for me, again, like this chart is just, it has, I mean, I'm 7 years in. I pretty much I know what to expect. But if I were new to this, this would be a nice place to start, and then just gauge, like you've said, like the feel of your breast, your postpartum, how the duration, and what are you trying to pump. Like, I know some moms really do, and there's nothing wrong with wanting extra milk for the freezer, especially for those of us that may have to go to back to work sooner, or work trips, like a lot travel. So it's just, I think it's good to know your body. I think
Yeah.
that's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the paper says, it's what you interpret about your body and its needs.
Yeah. I think it's part two of my ADHD brain of like, but what about human variation? And if somebody reads this chart and they think that's their number and they don't understand the
Yeah.
why behind it, and then
Yes.
they sabotage themselves and they're like, but I thought I was following my magic number. Because
Yeah.
I do see with Tickety Talks and even us social media, right? There can be a rigidity in
Yeah.
thinking of, well, I read that this should be my magic number, but I saw my supply drop. Something is wrong with me. So instead of blaming the magic number, blaming the
Mhm.
chart,
Yeah.
they're like something, my body was broken or my body didn't work. And instead of understanding the science behind it, and I love the
Mhm.
discussion, right? Because some people will follow the chart to a T.
Yeah.
and
Oh
some
yeah.
people will not. And so
Yeah.
I love that we're having this discussion to bring
Mhm.
more clarity to it, because I think a lot of people out there are going to have those aha moments of like, oh, like, yeah, I saw my magic number change at time, or oh, my flange, like that was the problem, or oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I did have more fullness in my breasts and I did respond better and that was my number, but now I need to make a
Mhm.
tweak or an adjustment to then get it back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I feel like this conversation, I think it's a great conversation, and
Yeah.
I always enjoy talking to you because I'm always learning something new. And I don't know. I still think it's individual breasts.
Yeah.
I'm
Fair.
gonna,
So
what
what
I
does
just,
everybody out there think? Any of the followers
I
out there
know.
think? Because some of you have seen this before, some of you haven't. So I might have to put up a poll of what people think,
Hmm.
right? Of like, what do you think? Because it's not. I don't. I've got it, and I've had it sitting in front of me right now. Your magic number is largely determined by your breast storage capacity, which is the max volume of milk in your breasts at their natural fullest, not forcing fullness, but natural fullness.
Interesting.
And it doesn't say, it says your magic number is the number of times you need to remove milk from your breast each day to maintain your production. And this is a guide. But oh, it does actually say in here max pump yield both breasts combined. That's what it has on
Ah,
the chart.
interesting. Okay.
That's what they have on in like fine print next to the max
Okay.
pump yield.
Interesting.
But to
Okay.
your point, I agree. It's like it could be murky.
Well, so when I shared this post,
Yeah,
I had done a giveaway. And you know
yeah,
what? Maybe we should do another one
yeah,
just for kicks. I don't know. We'll give something away. Don't worry. I got that covered. We'll do that after we're done here. So let's do this again. We will post this again. We can collaborate it,
yep,
and then we'll make a poll out of it.
yep.
And then we can ask moms again to add um what what is their magic number? What is their perceived magic number? And what are they pumping? And we want to know right breast, left breast, right? At its
Yes,
fullest.
yes.
And then we'll do a 24-hour and then we'll kick it off. We'll give away something really cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because that would give us the most information, right? Because if you have
Hmm.
that data of right breast, left breast, then you know what it is combined,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And yeah, I like that.
Because I guess what I was saying before I like went off the rails here,
Yeah,
I I did this a month ago, and there were like 400 people who responded,
yeah,
and the information that they were providing to share, like, my magic number is this is how often I have to pump a day, and this is my what I'm yielding. Those numbers made sense to this chart for me. Like, in looking at
yeah,
it, it made sense. It was adequate. Um, but I guess it's all interpretation and how you apply to your, even if that I can't disagree with what they're saying.
yeah.
It's their
Yeah,
chart.
how they did.
But I am interested as far as like crowdsourcing goes in like real life.
Right, because most of these studies were done on small close set numbers. And so when you actually get mass information, it can be like, oh, yeah, it made sense. So I love
Yeah,
that.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Um, should we, what do, I can get that post rolling in no
yeah,
time.
let's
And
do
I'm just
it.
gonna, we'll make a poll on it. If you agree, if it's both breasts, based
Yep,
on both breasts collectively or one breast individually. And we'll do a 24-hour giveaway. Wrap up
yeah.
this conversation.
I think that sounds great. All right. If
Okay.
anybody has questions, pop them in the question box. I'm looking back through just to see if there's anything about the topic that's being asked. Da, 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 joined. Can you use your morning pump as the max number if that's the largest pump? And do you have to use like a 20-minute pump time, or can it be longer? So technically to this chart, it's saying when it's your fullest pump, which is typically first thing in the morning because of milk making hormones. Like, you're supposed to have more water in your milk first thing in the morning to hydrate baby and help them poop during the day. And you're supposed to have lower volume, hyper concentrated fat, less water in the afternoon and evening because it helps baby not poop overnight once they're past the newborn phase. So there should be a rhythm to milk with highest in the morning. So I've always taken it as your highest yield first thing in the morning, that first pump of the day, because of water content. And it would be however long your body needs to move as much milk as you can to an efficient pump. Because some people with a fast letdown could empty their fullest volume in 5 or 8 minutes, and some people would need 25 to 30 because their letdown is slower or milk just moves slower to that pump. So in my opinion, that largest pump of the day could take anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes, depending on how somebody responds to their pump. Do
Cool.
you agree with that,
I do
Kristen?
agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do agree.
And
Yeah.
then again, our big controversy, which is like per the chart, they're saying it's combined. And both of us, I think, kind of have questions because I agree with you in the smallest capacity, that 1 to 2 ounces per breast would be a very different story than 10 ounces per breast,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that again, for me, is like, that's the question. That's basically what we're here
Hmm.
scientifically trying to figure out.
I
And then
just, yeah.
go for it.
I just, when looking at the increase, maintain, and decrease, that's when I really agree with the maintenance. I don't, maybe it kind of does it shift gears? I don't think so. But like the increase, maintain, and decrease, I do agree with those figures based on those max capacities at its individually, because you may not always be getting 10 ounces of breast. You might be
Yes.
getting
Yes. First
six
thing
to
in the morning.
seven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Like
you're right.
I'm
Because
not.
first, if you're going 10 to 12 hours overnight, I would expect you to pump 10 ounces or 12 or how, a lot more first thing in the morning
Mhm.
than in the afternoon. So it does make sense to that volume where you're like 10 in the morning because I'm really, really full. Baby slept 6 hours or eight
Yeah.
hours and then less
Uh-huh.
volumes through the rest of the day. It does make sense.
Yeah. There's so much, there's so many ways. I don't want to say there's many ways to spin this chart because I
Yeah.
don't think there is, but I just I just like this chart for individual breasts. I don't know. If you're pumping 3 ounces out of a breast, max capacity, you likely have to pump 7 times a day.
Yeah.
But if I was pumping 3 ounces collectively out of both breasts,
That's eight.
yeah, and
That's
then
eight times, right?
right,
Eight
yeah,
times three is 24. You're looking at
right,
8 to 9 times, which is average.
yeah. I get
But
it.
if
I
you're
get
only
it.
pumping
Yeah.
that three in the morning, then it's like, oh, three and then two and then two and then two and then one, because as that goes through
Hmm.
the day, then I'm like, oh yeah, you really do need to pump like 10 times to get that same number.
Yeah. If only it was a perfect science, it would be a lot easier of a conversation.
Well,
But
and it's interesting because my last appointment, I had a virtual before this, and both parents are very data driven and they want exactly 4 ounces going into the baby every single time, 6 times a day. 6 times 4 is 24. And the baby at the breast is not taking 4 ounces every time, six
yeah.
times a day. The baby's like, I want to take three. And so
Hmm.
it's like sometimes there are humans out there that are very data and chart driven where they're like, okay,
Yeah.
it's this number and this number. And it's like, but it's an art, it's feeding.
Hmm.
And there has
Yeah.
to be some flexibility too.
Yeah, I agree. I love data. I'm all over it. I totally agree. And I think that's why my head like starts spinning when I look at this because I can see it from your perspective totally. But then I get back into my own head and I'm like, but I just don't think like you can't maintain that kind of supply. But I don't know.
But
I
I
guess
love
we
that. I
just
love that there's more than one perspective. And I think that's the key takeaway. I really appreciate you that you're always willing to play badminton with me, right? You're willing to like hit the ball across the court and
totally.
actually discuss this in a really friendly way of like, because it's not going to be the same for every human. Like you
Yeah.
and how your body works fits it perfect. And I love
Hmm.
that. And there's a large portion of people that will fit it exactly to the chart. And then
Hmm.
it's like, to my perspective, it's like, but I'm seeing people who don't fit the chart and are like
Yeah.
frustrated by it. And so
Sure.
I love it. I love the discussion. I love the variability. I love that it works for some people. And I love that we can question it and be like, hey, let's discuss it so that people who don't follow it exactly can be like, oh, my body's not broken. My body works different. The chart isn't for
Absolutely.
me. There's a
Hmm.
different chart for me. There's a different method for me. And so that moving pieces and being able to have some flexibility in it where we do try to pigeonhole science things, like we like concrete productivity, especially in the US. We want everything to fit in a box. I love that we can have that discussion and really both of us be totally open and be both of us be like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I'm going to shift how
Yeah.
I think about it. And
Totally.
no, I'm going to keep how because this is actually what I see works for me and for what works for the people around me. So that's why I'm always like, yes, that's why you're my breastie because we need more people that are
Yeah.
willing to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. No, this was fun. I'm glad
Yeah.
that we were able to chat about this. And I hope that we could talk about it all day and you have your perspective and I can have mine. But it's nice it will be really cool to see what others what they're going to add to the
Yeah.
conversation in the comments of our giveaway. Because it's
Yeah, for
happening.
sure.
It is happening. That is coming. We'll continue that conversation after this.
Yeah, I'll be really curious to see how people shift out because it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if it is both. If it
Yeah,
actually
I
really
know.
is both.
I know. I agree with that too. So I think it's going to be a bit of a split. Um, all right,
All
cool.
right.
What do we think?
I think
Let's
it's
get,
great.
I think it's great. Thank you for chatting.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And we'll do another one soon because I
Okay.
definitely want to review. There's so many new pumps on the market. I want to do another discussion about best
Hmm.
pumps of 2025, flanges and flange fit and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Because
Yeah.
we do research on that and everybody else
Mhm.
drop topics that you want to see us discuss.
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds great. I'm excited. And I'm currently testing more pumps because again, I'm still pumping. So
Yeah.
I swear every week is a new pump. It's so frustrating. So we'll just
Yeah,
keep it coming.
it's a $1.7 billion industry, and the market projection is a 30 to 40% increase in the market over the next 5 to 7 years, which anyone who's into business is like, oh, that's a lot of monies.
Yeah,
So
that
it's
shows.
companies realizing that birth is birth and it's not going to decline. Like we're just
Hmm.
having more babies and people are going back to work earlier and sooner and there is a market for it. So we are going to continue to see more and more pumps and then it's just
Yeah.
figuring out how do you evaluate the pumps that you have based on quality and how it works to see if it'll work for you.
Yeah, it's great. We'll
Yeah.
do it again. We'll break it down. All right,
Thank
cool.
you.
Thanks for
Yeah.
chatting.
You too. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.